Hey, Manana No Mas family. This is Kurt Von Anen with Manana No Mas. And this is our live presentation for June 12th, 2025. Uh, super great to have you here. If you're participating in the live, if you registered and you're coming to the live, I encourage you to jump in for questions and comments live on the side. And maybe we can have a conversation over there. If you're seeing this as a replay, I encourage you to subscribe. Go to manananomas.com, hit that subscribe link at the bottom of the homepage. That way you'll get the announcements to participate in these lives when we have them. But uh, and I realize I have to ask this. If you would like, share, follow, all of those things, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and help grow kind of what we're doing here. So I'm having. I'm not going to say I'm having a difficult time. What I'm having is an intense realization that my purpose is more than what it was when I got to town. Okay. So let me explain. For those of you that have missed kind of the foundation of what is going on, I worked for Ducati for a while. I worked for Suzuki for a while. These are big companies. I worked for them directly at the office. And when we were in Southern California working for Suzuki, I was a little absorbed with corporate work. Okay. And so that's putting it mildly. I love power sports. I love the motorcycle industry. I had to, acclimate myself to the marine industry and dealing with boats and outboard engines. And so all of that was going on. And, I was doing the normal, human living thing, right? Trying to pay bills in Southern California. Well, they had a big layoff in 2020 as COVID was rolling out, right? It was almost timed perfectly. So they had a big layoff. A lot of people lost their jobs at Suzuki. And I was one of them. And then right after that, if y'all remember a little bit about modern history, Black Lives Matter launched shortly after that. And so a guy in his mid 50s, white and bald with a little bit of a beard, looking for work at a high level managerial position in Southern California. Well, that wasn't going anywhere, folks. That wasn't going anywhere. And I'm not bitter about it. I don't want you to misunderstand the messaging. I just want you to understand the playing field as it was laid out. Okay. So we relaunched Manana No Mas. Now, Manana No Mas, I launched in 2000, the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. We launched Manana No Mas from the former name, Von Anen Designs and PR. Okay. So I think Manana No Mas is a whole lot more catchy than Von Anen Designs and PR. Von Anen Designs and PR does make a really good looking signature, when you write something down. But Manana No Mas was a little bit better and a little more apropos for what we were dealing with at the time when we came up with the name. So now Manana No Mas is branded. It's if you search Manana No Mas in Google, you're going to get pages and pages and pages of Manana No Mas content, video recommendations, client testimonials, all kinds of stuff. And so now, even if I wanted to change the name, it would be a really difficult adventure to change the name. But I'm digressing. Let me get back to the topic. Relaunching Manana No Mas and living in Southern California and dealing with the politics and economy of Southern California, it was a daily struggle, an absolute daily struggle. And I lost focus on what my purpose was. I knew my obligation, but I didn't understand my purpose. And there is a difference, folks. If you're listening to me right now, you'll come to know that I choose words very carefully. I try to speak in very clear, transparent, easy to understand terms. I don't try to make things sound scientific or make myself sound more educated than I am. I try to use very simple terms. But I want to be clear. I understood my obligations, but I did not truly embrace a purpose. And I think that humans in general really do seek purpose. Really do seek purpose. So now here we are. I'm in my late 50s. We got through our period of unemployment, self-employment, low employment, whatever you want to call it, living in Southern California. Even did jobs like I was on the training team for the elections for Los Angeles County. That was one of the best monetary things that happened to us during that period. but very, very enlightening, right? Working directly for extremely left organizations like the AT&T organization under contract to train people for the elections. It was a really bizarre situation to know that in theory, elections aren't supposed to be biased, but they definitely leaned in a more liberal, left-leaning kind of practice than you would consider conservative. It was a very interesting experience. So anyway, again, digressing. I apologize. I'm going off the point. We moved to Kansas almost 2 years ago. And so moving to Kansas, I knew it was going to be a big change, but I didn't fully embrace or understand how big the change was going to be. And this is why I'm talking about this on this week's live. Understanding obligations, and then also understanding purpose, and understanding purpose is completely separate from obligations. It's a revelation. I can't believe I'm at the age I'm at now. Like, I've always wanted to do certain things. I can remember first time I saw Grant Cardone speak. I was young, very young, in the automotive business. I saw Grant Cardone speak back before he was famous, in a hotel in New Jersey. And I remember leaving that talk and thinking, I could do that. I could be a motivational speaker. That looked like a lot of fun. And I was a car salesman. But I remember thinking, why am I selling cars? I could be doing that. I can remember watching the Oprah Winfrey show for one episode. I'm not an Oprah fan, but I can remember watching an episode. She was talking to somebody. I can't remember who she was interviewing, but she said every single person of consequence that she interviewed, that person had said that from a very young age, they knew they were driven to do something important. They knew they were driven to do something important. And when she said that, I remembered things like being in third grade and people saying, what are you going to do when you grow up? Oh, I'd like to write a book. And people going, you don't even like English class. What do you mean you're going to write a book? That's stupid. Well, now I have 2 published books. It's, again, knowing the difference between an obligation and a purpose. So I believe, and maybe I'm really sticking it out here, but I believe my purpose is to pass things on to the younger generation, pass things on of value, pass things on in terms of not just facts, but ideologies, hard work, seed versus harvest in business, treating people right. I got John Maxwell certified for leadership, speaking, and training. I do a lot of corporate training. And to be honest, when you take that kind of training and you combine it with trying to live a life of faith, and does a life of faith come with challenges? Yes. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm completely broken. I've made a ton of bad choices. Just ask anybody that's known me in the past. You can ask people that know me now. They'll be like, oh, that guy, he thinks he's so holy, but he's not. And that's part of the humility that comes from honestly being a person of faith. You go, man, I'm broken, but I'm working on it. I'm broken, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I can't be perfect. He's perfect. I can't be, but I can try. And so part of that trying for me comes in the idea that I've already shared with many of you. And I want you to pay attention to kind of where I'm going with this. It's going to come full circle. I promise you, I'm not going to lead you off at the end and not fill in the details. So I have a course on Mañana No Mas called Jot It Down. I have that same course on the actionleadershipteam.com site, Jot It Down. And that's because journaling kind of changed the way that I perceive a lot of things. And so what I do is I have this here remarkable tablet, and in the tablet, I'm trying to put it so you can see it. In the tablet, I have a planner, but then if I swipe these days, there we go, you're going to see today's inspiration, right? So I have today's inspiration, today's priorities, today's notes. I didn't get to priorities and notes yet. Notes I usually do at the end of the day. So the inspiration and the priorities I usually fill in the morning, and then in the evening I come back and I look at this and I go, okay, did I make all my appointments today? Right? Did I? By the way, if you want to schedule an appointment with me, I still use a digital calendar, but you have to schedule a day in advance with me. So when I get up in the morning, I try to read today's inspiration, whatever today's inspiration is, and I jot it down. What did I learn today? Right? I try to learn or consider something every day, and then I try to make a note about it. And then when I'm doing that, I open up my Outlook in my computer, my digital calendar, and I write everything down in my planner for the day. And what that does is it kind of gives me that tactile experience, gives me that tactile retention of, okay, this is what my day looks like. This is what today is going to look like. I have to perform at these moments. And then I have the freedom, when I'm not obligated on that calendar, I have the freedom to fill in the work that I have in a productive, efficient way. Sometimes that work is going for a mountain bike ride. Don't be honest with you. Sometimes it's going for a mountain bike ride. Other times it's working on the Mañana No Mas website, or it's working on a piece of marketing, or it's reaching out to a client I haven't talked to in 6 months to make sure that they're doing well. Okay. But I want to read you today's inspiration. And this will, again, this isn't, but I'm going to get you full circle here. Okay. So if we go to 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 2. Now, if you are not a believer, don't sweat it. Like, I'm not trying to insult people. I'm not trying to trigger you. But there are a lot of people of faith that follow me. So bear with me. The messages in here, the message in here is great, whether you're a follower or not. Okay. This is Paul. He's writing a letter to the Corinthians. A lot of the New Testament is just letters that Paul has written to communities where he founded churches in. Okay. So he says, and this is, again, chapter 3, verse 2. It says, you yourselves are our letter, written on our hearts. So he's writing a letter on parchment to give to the leaders to read to the community, right? But then he says, you yourselves are our letter, written on our hearts, known and read to everybody. I take that to heart. What that's basically saying is people are watching you. People are listening to you. People are going to take in what you produce, right? Body language, facial expressions, verbal tones. You are a letter. You are a piece of communication, is what Paul is saying, right? Now, what Paul is saying is you are our letter. So what he's saying is we have mentored you. We have trained you. We have raised you in a way that you should behave. And you are a letter. People see you. They hear you. You are our letter written on our hearts. Okay? But then he says, you know you are a letter from Christ. Now remember, I said I'm a believer. Okay? So many people outside of religious organizations acknowledge that Christ was a real person. Christ was a historical figure. Christ was crucified. He was tortured and put to death at the request of the Jewish community by the Romans. Like, boom, boom, boom. Historically, Christ is now, I believe, Christ is the Son of God, just like the centurion that watched Christ die, and he said, surely this was the Son of God. Okay. So that's my personal belief. You don't have to believe that, but that's my personal belief. Okay. But it says, you know you are a letter from Christ, meaning I should reflect Christ. If I am a letter, and everyone sees that letter, and I know that I'm a letter from Christ, I should be able to reflect that. Okay. And it says, the result of our ministry, written not with ink, but with the Spirit. And what they're talking about there is there's this thing called the Holy Spirit. And if you're a Christian, you believe in the essentials of faith, you believe God, Jesus, Holy Spirit. And they're all one person, but they're different forms. And so there's God, like God the Father, and then there's God the Son, Jesus, and then there's God the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, what we're told is that all of us that accept and believe in Christ and believe in salvation, we all take in this Spirit. And so let me bring this back off of a religious speech and get back to some purpose. So we moved to Kansas, and I am overwhelmed at how much better my life has improved since leaving California. Overwhelmed instantly. This was not a slow transition. This was immediate. So as soon as we got to California, we moved into a rental house we didn't even like. This house was a mess. We moved into a rental, and Heidi was upset. I was upset. That my son was like, "Well, we'll make the best of it, Dad." He's a trooper. The kid's a trooper. And but I said, we cannot. We might not even make a year at this house. Like, we signed a year's lease, but we might not make a year at it. This place is a dump. And my wife was really upset. She didn't even want to move into it. And I convinced her. I said, you go stay at your sister's for a few days. I'll stay here and clean this place up. Maybe we can make it inhabitable. We already paid for it. So we're not going to get that money back. We already know they're going to say you canceled the contract. So we already know we're not going to get the money back. We're not wealthy people. So we just have to make the best of it. And I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that we suffered through that piece of junk house, because within 11 months, we were able to pay off all of our credit card debt, all of our personal debt to people that we had borrowed from in California. We were able to pay all that stuff off and start making offers on houses before we had even lived in Kansas for a year. Now, again, we are not wealthy people. So this to us it's amazing, right? So the pressure that used to be on me in California is vacant in Kansas. People tell me I am a completely different person. Friends of mine that I would speak to on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, they tell me all the time, "Oh my God, Kurt, you're a different person. You're a completely different person. You seem happy. You seem renewed. Okay." So stick with me on this. I become overwhelmed with that on one end, but then I begin to feel this emptiness. And I wonder, now that obligations aren't hammering me so much, what is my purpose? So I start thinking about it. What is my purpose? My son was in the Scouts. I thought, well, I'll jump in and I'll help the Scouts. Newsflash, in Kansas, parents participate in things. So I show up at Scouts and I assume I'm going to have to be an assistant scout leader or something like that. Nah, they got like 8 or 9 dads in uniform that go on all the camping trips and all the meetings, and they know all the rules. I don't have to do anything with Scouts. In fact, if I were to push myself into that crowd, I would probably take away from what that crowd was offering so I would have been a hindrance instead of a help. So I was like, well, Scouts isn't it. Then I found the business organization in town called Startup Hutch. I talked to Jackson, who ran Startup Hutch. He has since moved on to the newspaper, and they just got a new guy this week named Graham. Super nice guy. Just met him on Tuesday. But I reached out to Startup Hutch, and because I work with a lot of startups and I help launch a lot of companies through internet work and stuff like that. And I thought, well, maybe there's an avenue here that I can pay it forward in. But I'm going to be honest with you. Jackson had it going on, and they ran an event every month at Sandhills Brewery. They had guest speakers come in. I mean, I was a guest on the podcast, and I spoke at City Hall with one of their entrepreneur development classes a couple of times. But it wasn't like a full obligation purpose for me. So then I was like, okay, so what can I do? So through church, we go to this place called Crosspoint Church. They have a thing called Crosspoint Challenge, and Challenge is the college-aged group at the church. They meet every Monday, and you don't have to go to college to go, but they want people to be in that age group, right? And so I reached out to the pastor that ran that, and I said, hey, we used to work with the college age group in California. I kind of have a heart for younger people. I love young people's energy. If you want some help with this thing, I'd be willing to help you out with this. He says, and that'd be great. Stop by on a Monday and see how it goes. He didn't have a purpose for me there. He just wanted me to be there. First week, a little awkward. Second week, a little less awkward. By the third week, people are talking to me. Young ladies coming up and talking to me about their boyfriends, or questions about school, or questions about travel, questions about things, right? And it was more like life experience rather than theological discussions, which is still great, right? I'm just looking for a way to pay it forward. Like, how do I mentor to these kids? So then my son wanted to go to high school here, and he signed up for automotive auto body. And I really like the instructor, and my son really likes the instructor. Mr. Yoder's a super solid dude. And so I said, hey, Mr. Yoder, I have an extensive background in automotive, power sports, and marine, and I've published a book in those fields. Would you like me to come speak to the class and maybe offer them some insights on what employment looks like after school? And they were thrilled. They loved to have me there. And I'm going to be honest with you, that kind of rekindled a little thing in me. It rekindled the you like to teach moment, right? You like to share with people. I used to be a motorcycle safety foundation coach. And as someone that raced motorcycles for almost 20 years, to teach someone how to ride a motorcycle from scratch, you would think from the onset, you would say, well, you're not going to enjoy that because you used to race motorcycles, right? You might want to teach people how to race, but you don't want to teach someone from scratch. I loved teaching people how to ride from scratch. In fact, when I was a rider's edge coach for Harley Davidson, I used to love the ladies classes where you would, joke around. It was ladies only, right? No men in the class. And you would work with the ladies and teach them from scratch how to ride a motorcycle. And I always had so much fun with that because we would joke around about, because they would say, oh, my husband doesn't believe I can do this, and then we would like, hey, by the end of the weekend, you're going to be doing figure eights in the street. He's going to have to buy you a beer, right? And so we would joke and have a good time. And just to see someone pick up something new and be lightened by it. Okay. That's kind of a phrase that I steal from being a faithful person. It's like whenever you can introduce light to something, light shuns the darkness, right? So whenever I am training somebody and I see those lights come on, when I see them understand something, when I see a sense of accomplishment or understanding in somebody, it lightens them. It makes them stand up straighter. It makes them smile. It makes them feel accomplished. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's part of what makes me feel whole. It's part of my purpose. So when I started talking at the beginning of this almost half an hour ago, I was saying, I understood my obligations, but I didn't really understand purpose. Now, I've always enjoyed training. I've always enjoyed educating others. I've always enjoyed certain things, but I needed to drive down to like, what was a purpose? And I think this goes to like course creators. When I talk to course creators, I say, you got to niche down. You can't offer a course that's like, here's a generic course for everybody. No, you want to say, well, I like gardening. Well, gardening's almost for everybody. Right now you have to say, I like gardening with peppers. I like gardening with herbs. I like gardening with squash. I like gardening with flowers, right? So you niche. I like gardening with perennials. I like gardening with bulbs. I like gardening with annuals, right? So you keep going, niche. And so when I was trying to identify what a potential purpose for me could be, I really started thinking about how good Kansas has been to my family. We've been here less than 2 years. We bought this house. We're on half an acre. I have a golden doodle in my house. I never thought I'd be able to be a guy that says I have a golden doodle. I got a golden doodle. Things are good, right? Again, we are not wealthy people. I don't want this to get misconstrued. I don't have an underground garage full of Ferraris. Okay, we are not wealthy people, but we are not stressed out about this month's bills either. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out how would I pay it forward with my purpose, right? I like to share with others. How would I pay it forward within my purpose and have it make sense to other people? That's like the triple threat, right? You got to make sure that everything falls in place. And so it occurred to me, let's do a talk at the school about running a WordPress agency. So about a month and a half ago, I got this shirt there. I forgot I was wearing the shirt. Salt Hawk Career Talks. So I went there on Career Talk Day. What a quinky dink. I'm wearing the right shirt. Okay. So I went there for Career Talk Day. and I've spoken about this before. So if you've heard the story before, I'm not trying to bore you. I just got to fill some other people in. The kids got to pick the subjects they went to. I didn't realize that when I was first giving the talk. So once I understood that, after I gave the talks, I found out that the kids actually chose who they wanted to go see speak, right? There was like 40 different businesses there. I was one of the businesses, and I was talking about running a WordPress agency. And 60 kids came to see me talk. Out of those 60 kids, only 2 of them had ever heard of the word WordPress before. Now, this is enlightening. You have to understand, things change greatly between generations. And we joke and we say, oh yeah, things change, things always change. Kids don't understand today, blah, 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 right? Like, we can be old fuddy-duddy people that say crazy things. But the truth of the matter is, things really do get lost between generations. How many young kids are going to know how to use a multimeter? How many young kids are going to understand which hammer to use in certain situations, building or taking something apart, right? How many kids today are going to understand the difference between a 3/8 ratchet and a 1/2-inch drive ratchet? And I know I'm using the sense of a lot of tools, but let's go back to other things. Like, how many kids today would understand a green bar printer, right? Like, they just wouldn't. They just don't understand these things because it wasn't part of the framework that they grew up in. And so they're taking classes in school about coding or I don't know, God knows what about computers, right? Because the school has courses on computers, but oddly enough, doesn't teach anything about WordPress. And so 60 kids, only 2 of them have ever heard of WordPress before. And more alarming to me was that none of them had ever heard the term open source before. And so, and if you don't know what open source is, I'm not going to hold that against you. Open source in the IT space is the idea, they call it like a GPL license. Open source is the code is created and shared with the masses. So WordPress, for example, we can download a copy of WordPress, put it on our own hosting. We can modify the code. We can change the code. We can do anything we want with the code, and it's ours. Like, it doesn't belong to any specific person or organization. So the WordPress plugin, the WordPress platform, is open source, which also means it's free. So it's free. What these kids didn't understand was 43% of the internet runs on WordPress. WordPress is free. It's open source. And they could literally, with their computer that they already have access to, and with the internet access that they already have wherever they live, between having a computer and access to the internet, they can be in business instantly and be making revenue before summer. And when I communicated that to those 60 kids, the light came on. And a lot of the kids were like, I had no idea. I had no idea. I didn't know what I thought. And I'm like, you don't have to get a job and work for other people. You could start your own agency. And here's a hint. Here's 3 different ways you can start an agency. Here's a way that you can get business. Here's a way that you could freelance for other agencies. Here's a way that you could, and I gave them some examples. And I said, this is how you create revenue. This is how you create clients. This is how, and you know what? These kids didn't hear this stuff before. And that is when the opportunity, the purpose, and the relevance all came together. That whole triple threat thing became true. So I got a little inspired. I came up with the name Sunflower Launch. I proposed it to a couple of organizations here in town, and we are currently working on launching an apprenticeship program for young adults, so kids that get out of high school or the community college, and we want to put them into an apprenticeship program. And so what I've started doing is very softly, and this is part of the softly, very softly approaching some larger plug-in companies with platforms that are, pretty important for agencies to have. CRM tools, scheduling tools, an LMS, form tools, things like that. And I'm going to be looking for these larger plug-in companies to be willing to donate a minimum of 1 year's usage of these plugins to graduates of the apprenticeship program. Then what I'm looking for is a hosting company, and I've already got a couple in mind, but I'm looking for a hosting company to grant each of these apprenticeships 1 free year of hosting. Here's why, and bear with me on this. If someone's willing to join the apprenticeship program and get exposure to all of the factors of running an agency, and then stay in town and grow their own agency, right? That the goal is to grow the tax base of the area, right? Um, why not? Why not give them a leg up? Give them the ability to host websites for a year for free, to build websites on plugins that they don't have to pay for the whole year, and give them a chance to build some revenue before they start accruing credit card debt buying plugins. Are you tracking what I'm saying? So give these kids a launch. Give them a real launch. And here's what's interesting. It is being overwhelmingly accepted. And the idea that the schools do a good job here. I think in Kansas, the schools do a great job of giving the kids some great core skills. My son is learning a lot about automotive auto body in his, what they call I think they call it a core class, right? But at the end of the day, I don't expect the school to teach him, how to run dealership communication services and how to run, how to build an invoicing program to run his own body shop. That's not going to happen. And so someone goes to school and they learn a little bit about IT, a little bit about computers. They think they want to work in the industry with computers. They think they want to work with customers in a creative space. They can come join our apprenticeship as long as they apply and they're approved. We bring them in. We give them exposure to to marketing, to proposals, to requests for proposals, to invoicing, to project management, to negotiation meetings, to follow up, to conflict resolution with clients, all of it. We give them exposure to all aspects of running their own agency, and then we give them the tools to go and start their own agency and see what they can do. Folks, to me, this is a personal story talking about the difference between obligation and a calling, right? Having a purpose. I want to encourage you. If you are bogged down by the day, if you are, struggling week to week, month to month, making ends meet, and you feel like you're on the treadmill, but you don't really, so you're making your obligations, you're meeting your obligations, but you have an emptiness and you feel like, I'm not sure what my real purpose is. First off, I want to reassure you, if you're a person of faith, your purpose is to worship God. Your purpose is to serve Christ. Your purpose is, but then what does that look like? That's where everyone gets lost, right? So what does that look like? Well, like today's inspirational reading said, I am the letter that has been written upon, right? I'm the letter. I am what people see. I am what people hear. I am what people see as a reflection of Christ. And so if I could take my skill set and pay it forward and give the next generation a fighting chance at surviving this kind of weird space. If you go, and part of the inspiration for this is if you go to a word camp, you're not going to see young people there. You're going to see people 35, 40 years old plus in the WordPress space. I mean, I'm almost 60. So you see a lot of older people at word camps. You see a lot of older people on Zoom calls about WordPress. If you go to a WordPress meetup, chances are you are going to see someone that is over 40 years old. And so the idea that we could be sharing this amazing tool, flexible, open source, free tool with a younger generation and giving them a head start to start their own very equitable businesses, I'm super excited about that. So if you would like to know more about Sunflower Launch or the process and how I am assembling this and putting this together, or if you have questions about why I consider this such a valuable purpose and things to share with other people, reach out. You can feel free to give me a shout. If you're seeing this live, like, subscribe, comment, whatever. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn, and you can go to manananomas.com, subscribe, so you get the next announcements for the next thing. And folks, I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.